been talking about pay transparency and base salary transparency. I think one of the things that candidates always ask us when we're talking about clients is the total compensation package. And you've kind of alluded to that quite well just before. Do you ever see that, the government making benefits or total compensation package, I guess, transparent or kind of then coming out with it?
I think something like equity, there could be more transparency around because, but why I don't see benefits ever, or not ever, but I don't see that as an urgent request is because generally don't differentiate benefits packages. So it's not something that you can negotiate to say, well, do you want the gold or the silver? And well, they didn't ask for the gold, so we can get away with giving them the silver. Whereas equity and salary, because those are negotiable, they are variable, there's more urgency around having transparency on those.
So now, of course, with the remote work world, allowing a lot of people to work pretty much from anywhere, either within Canada or globally, how do you see that changing the practices of companies that are more focused on location-based compensation?
Yeah, I think that, so we've seen this a little bit in the data, but I expect it to happen even more. And that's that you start to see those gaps closing. Because if you were looking for a tax accountant and you say, well, in New York City, the person's wanting 150 and the person in Florida is wanting 100,000. So you go, great, we'll hire in Florida. But eventually then that candidate in Florida becomes more valuable because more and more companies can say, hey, we can hire in Florida for cheaper. So then those prices in Florida are going to go up. The price in New York will continue to rise as well, but those prices in Florida are going to just slowly start to close those gaps. And I think that you're going to see more and more of it. Where it gets a little bit different is in different countries. And the reason why I think that's a little bit different is because you can't just choose to say, hey, we have all Canadian staff, but this one person down in Boise, they're cheaper, so we can just hire someone in Boise. Because there's way more that goes to it. There's tax implications, there's benefits implications, there's all kinds of rules and regulations around hiring, even in different provinces. That you're opening yourself up to other costs and time that the company's going to have to spend on that. You'll still see those same country differentials. Some of those gaps might close a little bit, but I think within countries, certainly within provinces, you're going to see some of those gaps starting to close. Like I think in Alberta would be a great example to say, hey, we're hiring remotely. We want a software engineer. And in Calgary, the rate for a software engineer is X. Or you go to Grand Prairie, we can get a software engineer for even less because up until, 2020, that software engineer in Grand Prairie was just having to get jobs at some, local place in Grand Prairie. But now they're opening themselves up to say, I can work at that larger firm based in Calgary or Edmonton. And so they might be cheaper initially, but I think that those, again, opening that market up is going to raise those rates and it's going to start to close those gaps.
And that kind of leads into the next question around kind of remote work and kind of US companies looking into the northern brother of Canada, taking a lot of its talent. So I guess how has this affected the total reward strategies of Canadian companies?
Yeah, I mean, so this is me you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, because my company's, headquartered in US. More than half of our employees are there. We actually only have maybe 15 employees in Canada or something like that. But overall, we're cheaper. So an American company, it's enticing. Now, the other things that I discussed about, well, actually saying you're having Canadian employees or you're not having Canadian employees, that is taking that initial step, that initial hurdle. There are costs involved. There's ongoing costs with, you have to do a T4 rather than a W2. And so you have to have someone managing those programs and there's tax implications and things like that. But if an American company is open to hiring Canadian employees, they can hire them for cheaper. And then what we have is some of those, again, those gaps that we talked about, those gaps start to close because they can say, great, oh, your market is paying you 150, we'll pay you 175. That's fine. Cause that's like 130, American. So we're to the American company, they're still getting a deal. To the Canadian employee, they're getting paid higher than they would by any of these Canadian companies. So the Canadian companies, obviously it's a huge challenge, because if they're saying, hey, based on our budget, we don't want to, or we can't match some of these American offers. But then, Al, it comes back to what you were saying. Is it all about just the dollars? Because if anyone wanted to leave for the same job at $10,000 more, 80% of people could just do that. They could say, I want the exact same job that I have. I just want to be paid $10,000 more. So I'm going to switch jobs and I'm going to go and take this other job. Now, the benefits might be worse. You lost a bunch of equity because it was vested and now it's gone, and you have to restart and all this. And so you're probably not really that much further ahead, but you absolutely could do it. But then it becomes, for a company that's saying, well, how do we compete, or how do we keep these employees? And the thing that I always say is, people are going to leave a job for a million reasons. They hate the company, they hate their boss, they hate their coworkers, they don't like the commute, they don't want this. There's things that they don't like, so they're just going to leave their job. But you never want someone to leave for the same job making more money. So, but if you have these American companies that come in and say, you're currently a director of total rewards, we want to make you a director of total rewards, same job, but we're going to pay you $10,000 more. Those Canadian companies, you have to say, well, what are we doing what's the benefit of keeping these people here? And you can say, we're a Canadian-based company, so our biggest priority is our Canadian employees. Whereas the American company might say, Canada's like 9th on our list of countries. So actually, we don't even have that many employees there. So we're actually not too fussed if you leave, because we'll just find someone else and we can do whatever. So, then it becomes, well, do you have a great physical space? Because obviously the American company can't match that, or assuming they don't have an office set up here. But is it the physical space that's great? Is it is there some Canadian benefits that you're offering, or things like that can really make you stand out and make you say, this is all the great things that we're doing for you. We're offering on-site this and that, that can compete with those American companies.